Hi, this is Clark on Temptress. Today's video, I'm going to talk about the optimal way to charge lithium and lead batteries. There's a way that we're all doing it now because it's the equipment available, but there's a better way, and you might not have even ever heard of it before. Before we get into the subject of this, let me talk about a guy that has a web page called wildbus.com. Name is David, and he took this idea of hybrid and he really researched where the actual electrons are going. He's graphed out everything. He got in touch with me back when he was developing this document, and we kind of worked together it on a bit. But he's done a really good job. My theory and my video presentation of it kind of described it, but there's nothing like reading basically a book on the subject with all the graphs. So I recommend you go there. Now down below my picture right here, there's the title of this video. Very near that, there's some kind of an arrow or whatever. Click there, you'll get the description. There'll be a link in the description. Generally, when you watch one of my videos, always read the description, because sometimes I get better ideas later on. I can't edit the video, but I can edit the description. Anyway, on with the show. 9 months ago, I put up a video about how to mix lead and lithium batteries. It's kind of how I was doing it for a couple of years, and it works fine, but it's not optimal. Got thinking about it in the interim, and I thought, well, there's a better way to get that lead to charge up right the first day instead of having to wait like a week for it to catch up. If you were doing a smaller system and you use the lead every night a little bit, this really wouldn't be a good way because, you got to get your lead fully charged. Got thinking about it, and that caused me to do some research and more thinking. By the end of it, I have found that how the battery companies are telling you to charge your lithium is not exactly right. In fact, it might be actually very detrimental to the lithium. I know why they're doing it, and I'll talk about that later. It's not evil, it's just why they're doing it. This should be done in a different way. Also, I kind of realized that the world doesn't have good components to do what I want to do yet, which makes sense because people weren't mixing these. So I made the component. We've got it running on the boat. I've got it running on a friend's boat. We're testing it around, it's working. So I'm going to go in today's video about how batteries really want to be charged and how to hook them all up to each other in a more specific way. And then at the end, I'm going to tell you how this little device kind of does it for you. So let's start out with lead. People are probably more familiar with lead. Lead has got its personality, just like lithium has its personality. Lead likes to be fully charged. In fact, if you take a lead battery and you just use it from like 80% to 40% over and over, it will degrade. Occasionally, at least, it needs to come up to 100. And it really likes to be fully charged. But it shouldn't be overly charged. It's tough. It can handle it if you do it, but once it's charged, if you just keep trying to push power into it, you're just boiling its water away. If it's a flooded battery, that means you have to top it off. If it's an AGM or any of the sealed batteries, they have a way of kind of recombining the water up to a point, but you can actually overdo this, and you should do it right. By right, let's talk about first how batteries are charged basically with any commercial charger you could buy right now. The charger can put out a certain number of amps, and it tries to put out all the amps it can at first until the battery voltage comes up to a set voltage. When it comes to that set voltage, it'll go into a mode, as it were, called constant voltage, where it tapers the amp flow down until the voltage just stays right where it is. And it holds it there until a trigger happens that says, hey, this battery is charged. The problem is, the current trigger that everyone's using, and I haven't seen anything that doesn't. Comment below if you know of a good lead battery charger that does this right. But what they're using as a trigger is an amount of time. So you can set the amount of time, like 2 hours. So it'll come up to the voltage you want. it will stay there for 2 hours, and then it'll come down to a float voltage where the battery is not being overly charged, but there's enough current available to take care of ship's requirements like refrigeration and stuff. So you're basically running off the solar panel. That can be set up to be good the first time. But let's say this is your engine alternators regulator. You start up your engine and you travel a distance and it comes up to full voltage, and then it soaks, as it were, for the amount of time, and it says, okay, you're charged, and drops down. And you keep driving for a while, and then you stop the boat, maybe you go fishing, whatever. You start the engine again 20 minutes later. Well, the regulator goes through the whole cycle again and soaks them for another 2 hours. Well, those batteries are fully charged. They don't need to be soaked. The right trigger to say when to come out of that high voltage state is to watch the amps that are going into the battery, and when the battery is only accepting a certain percentage of their size, I won't go into what the number is, but it's a known number, to shut down at that point. So if you were to do that with my earlier example, the first time it would stay maybe 3 hours if the batteries were low, but eventually they'd be fully charged and down it would come. If you restarted the cycle, restarted your engine, it would come up to volts, which would happen very quickly because they're fully charged, and say, oh, this battery's already full. Down it would go. So in short, the triggering event that a charge controller should use to tell it's time for the lead to come down in voltage, it should be the amps the lead is accepting, not the amount of time it's been there. I had a charger back in the 90s, I guess, I bought, that did that. And to do that, they had to have remote shunts all over the place and amp meters all over the place. And I know why the companies aren't doing it now. It's a combination of it's expensive and people are accepting the other method. And probably it's right to accept the other method because, like I keep saying, lead is tough. Lead can take it. I wanted to talk about all that because in the lithium world, kind of the same thing is happening right now. So let's talk about, for example, I have Battle-Born batteries. Let's talk about how the Battle-Born manual says to charge their batteries. It says to charge them until they come up to 14 point something, up in that range. I think they say 14.3. The number's unimportant right now. Come up to this higher voltage, stay there for 20 minutes per battery. So for every 100 amp hours of battery you have, it's to stay there for 20 minutes. And then drop down. They say you can float, but you don't have to float. That's their instructions. If a cloud were to come over and your solar were to reset, or you start your engine again, that whole system would cycle again, and that is definitely wrong to charge a charged lithium that way. Remember, lithium is very delicate, and if you charge a lithium full, and then you immediately go through the same regime but try to charge it full again, you will be overcharging that lithium. And unlike lead, it's not like some water evaporates that might be replaceable or recoverable. Lithium metal actually changes state inside the battery permanently, and you just don't want to overcharge your lithium. While that method might be good for a fully discharged lithium, if your lithium is just a little charged, or your lithium is just recently fully charged and hasn't been used, this can actually be quite detrimental for it. At the very least, your charging regime should take into consideration if the lithium is fully charged already or has been discharged a bunch. And with lithium, unlike lead, you don't necessarily really want to charge them to 100%. Obviously, if you charge them to 100%, there's more power available to you. But lead needs to be at least periodically charged to 100% or it will degrade. Lithium, on the other hand, prefers to stay around 50%, to be charged and discharged right in the middle. Well, that would be ridiculous because we want more out of our batteries. But if you were to go up to 80% and discharge down to 20%, it's arguable you get a significantly longer life out of your lithium. Obviously, you kind of only have 60% of the battery, but you'll get a longer life. So if life is important to you, that's the way to go. If you really want as much power in that battery as possible, then you want to go to 100%. So it wouldn't be ridiculous for a lithium battery to say, well, normally I want 80%, that gets me through the night, I'm all happy. but on occasion, I'm expecting some cloudy days, I want to crank it up to 100%. So how to optimally charge these things. If we were to read a paper by the battery scientists, the chemists and physicists that make the cells, and how should we charge these? Well, what you'd find is you charge them, at a known amount of amps. You charge them at 20 amps, let's say. And for that 20 amps, you keep charging until the voltage comes up to a certain level. When it hits that level, you stop charging, you are done. Now, if you were to charge at more amps, you actually come to a higher voltage before you're done. And if you charged at a very low rate of charge, you'd find that the voltage is actually quite low when they're fully charged. So there's this curve that represents fully charged. That's based on amps and volts. And another curve that represents 80 and all the way down. We can use that information if we can watch the amp flow and we can watch the voltage and we can see all this. So why do the lithium battery companies say charge the batteries kind of in a lead way? If I had a tinfoil hat, I'd be saying, because they want you to destroy their batteries so that you'll buy more batteries. But that's not true. They're trying to establish themselves as having good batteries. I think it's because you're trying to sell batteries, right? And if you say they need to be charged in this manner, and there's no tools out there to charge them in this manner, you won't buy their batteries. So they say charge them in kind of a lead way, with a couple adjustments to time and to voltage, but still in a lead way. Well, you can look around and you say, hey, my charger can do that, or Victron sells a charger that can do that, and Victron can very simply, without changing their design, say, we'll just take this and change the software a little bit, and then we can say we're a lithium battery charger. So everybody's happy. The lithium battery companies get to sell batteries because there's chargers available. The charger companies, same thing. They can say they can charge lithium. In the perfect world, you'd want to watch the amps that it's absorbing and do all the right choices based on both voltage and amp flow. Well, I've got this little device, as I mentioned. A lithium battery, much like a lead battery, is a collection of cells that you store power in. You have a collection of cells in series so you can raise the voltage up to what you want. In the case of a 12-volt lithium, that's 4 cells. You also have a device that it's called a BMS, a battery management system. The BMS watches the voltage on every individual cells. It also watches the voltage on the whole bank, and it watches the voltage, the amperage coming in and out. But what it does is say a cell got out of balance, it's going to destroy itself, shut down. It's going to say your whole battery is too high or too low a voltage, shut down. It's going to say, I'm only big enough to switch 100 amps, so you've just asked for 120 amps, shut down. You can see its only real choice is shut down because it only knows about this battery. And because all it can do is use the nuclear option, it really doesn't do it until you're right on the edge of damage. This is actually a problem with using only lithium on a boat, because if one cell gets out of balance and it shuts down while you're running your engine, it can destroy your alternator. We all know you can't just pull the battery away from an alternator. It ruins its diodes like in a millisecond. My little device is in a different position. It knows that it's got some lithium and it knows it's got some good old reliable lead. So it doesn't have to wait until the lithium is in danger territory to shut it out. In fact, it shuts it out early as just a matter of course to get through the day. It's just a different thing. We've had BMSs for a while. We've had charge controllers for a very long time. Of course, we've had batteries for a long time. But there's nothing out there that I've found that brings them together in a smart, switchy way. And that's what I'm trying to offer to the party right now. And it's called a Battery Bank Management System, BBMS. We're just calling ours the Bank Manager and the Bank Manager Plus for the 2 versions that I'm going to offer at the beginning. What it does is, over the night, your batteries are together. And throughout the day, as I'm going to say day because almost everybody out now charges with solar, right? So during the day, power's coming in, and the voltages of the batteries they're locked together, they come up together, and they come up and they come up. When they come to a point where you would like your lithium to stop charging, the system breaks them apart. The lead is still connected to a charge source and it continues to rise, and basically the solar regulator is in control of the lead and does whatever's necessary. But eventually the voltage will start coming down, either because the charge controller says, hey lead, you're done, or it got dark, you know, the sun only stays up so long. Well, that lead voltage will start coming down. The lithium's been creeping down a little bit, but not much because it's lithium, it just kind of stays where you leave it. And it comes down, and when they come back together and they're at the same voltage, it's safe to bring them back together. And now they're back together. Your ship systems will be running off lithium mostly, because the lead really, as I said in the other video, just look at the other video for that. And that all works. A couple things my system does beyond that, which is actually pretty useful, is it watches, and if ever the charge starts happening again, you know, it's marked these as fully charged in its memory. If it ever starts charging again, because that drop could have just been a big cloud that came over, it'll drop the lithium off, let the lead come up, and wait till the next cycle and grab it. It won't mark the lithium as candidate for full recharging until it's come down to a lower voltage. I believe right now I'm using 13.22. At 13.22, it's pretty much certain that you've probably gone through the night, that you've used these batteries a bit, and it's much safer to come up. It's not perfect, but it's a good way to do it. There's going to be a couple versions of the device. One is done and working now. It's installed in Temptress, it's running her systems, it's installed in my friend's boat, and we're actually pretty happy with it. Now, there's more we're going to do. But at the stage it's at right now, I think it's a product. If I had wanted to put some lithium and lead together, I would trust this is a good system. There's a future version of this that I'm going to call the BBMS Plus. And I'm working on the Plus right now. It's on my test bench, starting to come to life, starting to do things. It has some advantages over the base system. First off, it'll be my first offering that'll handle a 12-volt system, a 24-volt system, and a 48-volt system. It has a little OLED screen, and that screen will tell you the voltage and the amperage and the last event and, you know, various communication type information to you. And it's also a device that you can use to have an actual menu to configure. It's just a generally nicer device. But the big thing about it is it has a Hall effect sensor. It has a little ring that goes around your battery cable, and it can watch the amps going through that battery cable in either direction. And because of that, it can use a different logic. It can use what I believe, and what, according to the papers I've been reading, is the right way to get your life out of your lithium cells. It can watch the amps flowing, and of course it knows the voltage that the cell is at, and using that it can say, well, you're charged how you want to be charged. One thing that it has on it that's very nice, I mentioned that menuing system, is you can dial it and say, I would like my batteries charged 80%. And they'll come up to 80% and they'll go down. If another charge happens, they'll come up, see that they're at 80% and drop down. You could set it to any number you want. In fact, if you're going to put your boat in storage, it would make good sense to set it for 50%. Leave it all alive. You'll still have your battery there to run your bilge pumps and all that kind of stuff, but your batteries will only come up to 50%, which is how you should store lithium. If you are out someplace living on your boat needing your power, and you know there's about 3 days of clouds coming, well, it would make sense to turn them up to 100%. It is actually good for lithiums to come up to 100% occasionally, so they can, if you have circuitry in your BMS to do top balancing, gives them that opportunity. So before a cloudy day, you set 100%. The next day, it will charge all the way. And you know, you could have a couple days at that if you wanted to, but eventually you probably would want to turn them down a little bit. The point is, you have the choice. So the bank manager sits between the banks. It sits between the lithium battery bank, the lead battery bank, the charge controller, the loads, and it manages them. It can shut them off, it can bring them together, it can generally make them all play nice together. That's how I see charging of batteries working. Lead and lithium have different personalities, but there's a common ground where they can work together. And there's also a very best way to do lead and a very best way to do lithium. This device can do those things. It can charge to the current specifications of the lithium battery manufacturers, and it can do at least what I consider the best right way to do it. Stay around and I'll do another video that'll kind of go a deep dive and show pictures and everything of my bank managers and how to wire them up and generally how to use them. There's a survey in the description below. It's our old survey, but if you haven't already filled it out, if you're interested in a bank manager, make sure you tick that box. It's also got the deal for being told about the air conditioners. The first 100 of those should be coming out really soon. So if you haven't signed up for an air conditioner, watch that video and maybe mark that too. More videos to come on that subject and many others. Bye from Temptress.